get rid of that brainwashing, people's brains are shut down.
Okay, now we're going to get back to something that you just
Okay.
hinted that you really didn't want to get into, and I don't want you to force you into it, but it was almost, you must now be at the stage after you've seen what's happened to the world since 9/11. You must be at the stage where you are contemplating who the who's are.
Oh, it isn't about the who's, but the whys.
Okay, the whys then. Let's contemplate about the
You know, the
whys.
who is this crew of people. You know, I call them the crew.
Yes, that they are.
Yeah. So the why. Uh, you know, remember destruction of language, borders, and culture. And look at what's happening with this country and with the European Union. European Union is destruction of borders. And now you know when, like with the U.S., if you bring in if you don't have a national language, you know, for English press one, if for Spanish press two,
Yes.
you know, that is a destruction of the country because you don't have national. It's all right to be bilingual, but you need to have a national language. Otherwise, you have friction and conflict within. And of course, the culture is very important. That's, you know, been really turned on its ear recently. And of course, the borders. So, what do we have going on in Europe now? It's a big stirring around, a big pot of whatever getting stirred in. That's it.
In 1960, when I went to Europe to try to find my father, who had abandoned our family, I ended up joining a British repertory company, and I loved being in England. It was so British, and it was just such a wonderful place to be for a year. And then I was in Spain, and then I was in Czechoslovakia, and I was in Hungary, and they were all so distinctive cultures. And
Mm-hmm.
Werner Herzog brought me to Vienna to honor me over the Garrison tapes, and I have a wonderful picture with Werner and wonderful words he said about me in the film. And it's all gone, Dr. Wood. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't recognize English
Yep.
movies anymore. I don't recognize French movies anymore. I don't recognize Spanish movies anymore. And
It's a
now
destruction.
but why did these countries, even the Germans, for God's sakes, the past master race, why have they allowed such an influx?
They don't realize it, or they get the wrong person in charge of the key. It leaves the door unlocked or something. But people can see what's gone on with our country. But I was trying to stay a little bit more what this show is about 9/11. You get people who do question the events of 9/11, but they're given someplace else to go to keep them occupied, so they don't look at the evidence. And I think that happens with about everything else. And they think that they're helping the cause or whatever, but they're actually not. If you think about those who are promoting that there were bombs in the building. Okay, so bin Laden didn't instruct the Muslims to drive airplanes in the building. He instructed them to go put bombs in the building. Everything else is the same. You see,
Absolutely.
it's the
Yes.
same. It's the same thing. It just gives people a different lollipop. And from my looking at 9/11, and I didn't look into the JFK stuff, but easily I can see that people who didn't like the lone gunman story, the grassy knoll. And that keeps them occupied and keeps them from looking further at evidence. And it's something that never gets proved or disproved. It's just a holding tank.
Right now, Dr. Wood, are you invited and paid substantially to speak to groups as a result of people hearing about your book?
Nope. Instead they get the truthers there because they have a very well-funded advertising campaign and a very nice budget. I don't. I just have a few friends that help out here and there when they can.
The couple of times I saw your lectures, I believe one was in England. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if one was.
St. Anne's.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was spelled, but that's when I first wanted to talk to you and interview you and get your book, and I'm sort of ashamed of myself that it wasn't until a month ago that I finally got your book, but I used to look at your site all the time. So are you just now earning a living from the sale of the book?
And doing some other odd jobs on the side. It's I live poor, but it's something. If, like I said to my mom when I told her I need to get into doing this, that's in the introduction chapter of the book. She said, "Well, if you do that, you won't have a job." And I said, "If I don't do it, nobody will."
Oh my God,
And
that
I
is.
said that years ago, over 10 years ago. Now, doesn't it come true now?
Oh, absolutely, and it looks worse, quite honestly, as we look to the future, which may not even be a future. When
Yeah.
you when you
I saw it then, and who am I? But somebody needs to do it, and who else is going to do it? And I felt like I was in probably the best position because other people have families, they have kids going off to college, and who knows what. But I think they're more tied in, and I felt like it was easier for me to do it too. But
there must be somewhere on the planet a multi-millionaire who is not too fond of the United States of America and and knows the truth about, or somewhat of the truth about, what really happened at 911 because he or she looked at the facts. Why wouldn't someone contact you to help you? And the other thing is, have you ever thought of making a documentary about your book?
various people have volunteered to, and they've even filmed some parts, and then they used them to do a hit piece on me.
Oh my God!
It is you just it goes on and on. What I've learned, I've learned quite a bit. Now let's talk about Jesse Ventura. Somebody gave
Yes,
him a copy of my book,
right.
and he thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. He was talking about it and so forth, and then he got really beat up badly by the truthers. Well, if you're
Yes, he did. I remember. As a matter of fact, I've been trying to book Ventura for a year through his co-author and best friend, Dick Russell, who's been on my show a couple of times and is featured prominently in The Last Word in the Assassination. And Jesse keeps turning me down.
he's afraid to talk about this topic too because either he has to lie or something else or get if you're a politician, you can't do anything if everyone's against you. And that's one thing the truthers are trained for. They don't realize these are well-meaning people. They just get trained to recite these talking points and to hate anybody who has anything to do with Judy Woods. Let's go attack Judy Woods. And if I'm on a show, like you'll get probably lots of emails or something after you, post my show, the show with me that you've totally discredited yourself by having her on.
I must tell you, surprisingly, I put it up prominently on my Facebook page a couple of weeks ago. I have not received one negative comment, and just dozens of people anxious to listen to you because they probably can't
Well,
even.
congratulations to them because that identifies them as thinking people.
Well, anyway, the other thing that I wish to talk to you about is the kids that made that first anti-government 911 video, Loose Change.
Yeah.
What happened to them, and have you been in contact with them?
Oh, I met them in 2006, and they about spit on me when they met me. It was in person in New York. They were already being taught to hate me.
Why? I mean,
They were directed to. I mean, that people don't realize when you hear somebody like, let's go back to elementary school. You hear rumors like so and so said such and such behind your back. You
yeah,
believe it. You
yes,
believe it, and then
yes.
you have a negative impression of them, and turns out they're saying the same thing to them about you. And people can easily be coerced that way. So it's so important to see for yourself how many people out there repeat and repeat. Well, I heard her space beams theory has been debunked.
Well, it was not the 911 kids. It was that documentary that seemed to burst on the scene, I think, through it being pushed by Alex Jones, that brought more people to question 911, even though they certainly might be wrong.
But see, you want to get the low-hanging fruit before it falls off the tree and starts looking around on its own. So people who are starting to think about something, you want to grab them and funnel them into, it was bombs in the building. And because once they're in there, it takes about 5 years for them to get out of that.
Has Alex Jones ever contacted you about being on the show?
Jesse Ventura was on Alex Jones's show and said, "Alex, you got to read this book. Where Did the Towers Go?" And before you get that out, Alex has said, "I know," trying to shut him up.
Oh my goodness gracious! Oh.
Yeah, I'm the most despised, whatever. He refers to me as the Space Beam Lady or Marvin the Martian. He's also called me.
Would it be possible for somebody like John Hutchison? I believe he lives in British Columbia, if I'm not mistaken.
He lives in Oregon now.
Oh, he does. Oh, I thought
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought he was a Canadian. Maybe because he was so smart.
He got married to somebody in the U.S. and he decided he wanted to live there, and he's happy. He's having a good time.
Oh, good for John.
He deserves happiness. He really deserves happiness in his life.
Well, has John ever thought of some way that he could help get you in front of schools or in front of community organizations or into libraries where you could talk about your book? Dr. Wood, I can't thank you enough for being here. The 2 hours for me just flew by, and my heart breaks for you for the fact that you say you're living poor. But I must tell you, you are an absolute treasure. Tell us where folks can get your book before we say goodbye.
It's my website, wheredidthetowersgo.com, or on Amazon. On my site, it takes you to the various places you can get the book. Also, where you can find it in the library if you wanted to do that.
Well, Dr. Wood, thank you again very, very much. And for those folks who can take the truth, you are, again, a treasure for America. And the wonderful thing about America is it can create people like you and Jim Garrison and Thomas Paine and a whole bunch of others. Sadly, it creates the George Bushes of the world, too. Thank you so much for being here, all of you, and we'll talk to you some other time. Bye now.
Thank you again.
Oh, Dr. Wood, thank you very, very much.
You're my spark of nature's fire. You're my sweet, complete desire. A sunny, 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 sunny. I love you.